It's the last day of September and I'm picking some sunset apples, so I'll just make a little video about sunset. Now, I've mentioned this variety in the past. I haven't always been the biggest fan of this apple, and indeed, like all apples, it has its faults, but its merits I think outweigh its faults, and it is a recommend. And in particular, I think this is a very good choice of apple if you want a nice sweet dessert apple that will also cook with considerable advantage, because it's a very good cooker, and you have a small garden. Because sunset, of its virtues, I would say it's a very fertile apple. It's always flowers very densely, and in fact the blossom on sunset is itself a very attractive garden feature. I've never known a year when this didn't blossom profusely. It is self-fertile and it will fertilise other apples. The flavour is similar to Cox, not as good, but it's similar. And the season is, I would say, October-November. You can maybe keep it longer, bearing in mind where we are in the far south of England. The far south, everything ripens a little earlier for us. Now, I'm going over this carefully, and I'm only selecting the largest, the best looking and unblemished apples. These are for our store. There's a lot on the ground, don't worry. Those are going to go for cider. These are a bit blemished. We haven't done any spraying this year. Not so much a conscious decision to convert to organic as the fact that we are sort of winding down the commercial side of the orchard for reasons I won't bore people with going over, because I've already mentioned them. Basically lots else to do. We're getting older. The orchard doesn't owe us any more money, if it ever did owe us any money. Well, it's just beginning to rain a bit. I better cut this video short. So I'm going over these and carefully picking a few boxes of selected best fruit, and this will go into our apple store for our use and to share with friends. I take some to work and give away, give to my place to work. I say at the end of the year, if you want to make a contribution to our charity, that's completely voluntary. We won't be selling any of these. It looks like it might have a maggot in it, I can't be sure. Yeah, it probably does. I'll chuck that down. So my friend Jeremy will be picking these up off the ground, and these will go to the side, the better ones. Once I've picked over these and selected the best of them, I'll just show you a few more of the trees. I've selected the best of these, biggest, the best, the most unblemished, the nicest coloured for ourselves. I'll then come over and go over the trees again with different kind of box, and I'll go to a different store and I'll ripen these for cider. Made some lovely cider from these. You can make cider from any apple. If you make cider just from cooking, just from dessert apples, it may be a bit too sharp and it will be lacking in tannin. But I made a cider from some overripe. I think 3 years ago or so, I made a cider from some overripe sunset. I'm just going to actually grab one of these to colour, move to some shelter. From some overripe sunset, which have gone too soft to sell, and that's another issue, the question of softness in apples. But anyway, it made a really nice, sweet, fragrant, fruity cider, and we wished we'd had more of it. So they're not quite perfectly ripe. You've got to make a compromise between leaving the fruit on the tree to achieve perfect ripeness and the fruit all falling before it achieves perfect ripeness. But these are looking pretty okay. Bit of a funny shape, that one. A few blemishes. Oh, you can't sell apples with blemishes. Well, hardly. It's a yellow background. It's green and it grades to yellow, and you get this lovely orange stripe. This particular variety, it's a seedling from the Cox's orange pippin, genetically very significant. apple. The cocks of course came from the Ribston pippin, and I'll probably do another video about our Ribstons in a little while. And it's lovely colour. It's a nice apple to sit with one or two in front of these, one or two of these in front of you, and you know, some paint and watercolour paints, and try and reflect the colour. It's amazing when you think of it. Every single one of these apples is a unique individual. You know, no two would have a pattern exactly the stripe. Do you know what idea's just come into my head? I think I'll repaint my white Telecaster in these colours. That would be cool. Oh, that would be cool. Anyway, the rain's just moving off, so I better get on and pick some more apples. So, the Sunset apple used to be quite widely planted. Faults, I will say it's a little bit susceptible to scab, although not terribly. These trees haven't been sprayed and they haven't got a bad scab problem this year. It's not been a bad scab year. It tends to make a very small apple, and you must thin it. If you grow Sunset, enjoy the blossom, let it set fruit, and then once the fruits are the size of a marble, once they're about 15 millimeters diameter, go through them and ruthlessly thin them out so that you've got about one apple every 2 or 3 inches of branch. Otherwise you'll end up with a large number of really tiny apples. This particular tree, I don't know why, it's the same as the others. I raised all these trees, by the way. I bud grafted every single one of these trees myself onto a rootstock and planted them as well. I remember the day we did it. But this is just to give you an idea. This has lost its leaves to some extent, I don't know why. Just to give you an idea about how many you should have. If we say, for example, there's a metre of branch, I just compare that with my arm. It's about 2 arm lengths of branch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. About 12 apples to a metre there. I'm not saying you couldn't get away with more, but if you don't thin these, you'll get a very large number of very small apples. This size at the most, often a lot smaller. You can get a picture of it there. Those will have been thinned, but I've got 4 apples there, which are a little bit too small. If these had been thinned so that there were only 2 instead of 4, then instead of being that sort of size, the fruit would be more like this sort of size. And I'd invite you to agree with me that you're better off having 2 this size than 4 that size. At least that's my opinion. Okay then, well, so much then for Sunset. It's a very agreeable apple. It was raised in Kent in 1918, so hey, it'll be its centenary in 2 years' time.